Knox Game Design, May 2020. Ludum Dare 46 entries and Leaderboard Security with Jacob, Dylan, and Levi.
Welcome everyone to Knox Game Design for May 2020. This is a monthly discussion of game development topics. My name is Levi Smith. I'm in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Also on the line we have Dylan Wolf in Lenore City.
Hi.
So I'm going to start out with a little bit of news here, if I can get everything straight. So this month is going to be showing off the games that we made for Ludum Dare, and I'm also going to talk about a little bit about leaderboard security or lack thereof. So the first bit of news that we were talking about in the Discord channel is that BitBucket is going to, it sounds like they're going to totally remove all the not Subversion, Mercurial repositories.
Yeah. They announced this a while back. I think what they ended up doing was like pushing it forward. Just people are working remotely now and you know, kind of gives you a grace period to move off, but they still are shutting it down. So
yeah, that kind of surprises me. It just seems like, oh, since they already have Git repositories on BitBucket, it looks like they would just migrate them over to Git for you. And I looked on BitBucket, and there doesn't seem to be an option. It's almost like you got to download your repositories if you don't have them downloaded already, convert them to Git yourself, then upload them back to BitBucket.
Yeah, when they first announced that, I remember them kind of discussing that of like, you know, hey, there's nothing we can do, even though there are ways that you could convert Git Mercurial repos to Git. There are extensions for that. I don't know. I can understand that like Git and Mercurial were kind of competitors for a while, or not really competitors given they're both open source, but
yeah, just like two different options that kind of do the same thing. And I could not tell you the difference between Git and Mercurial. I mean, they both do commits. I know with Git you have staging, which is like one extra step before you commit. But
yes, so Git kind of uses like Mercurial by default. Most of the tools just take all the changes you've got for files you've got added and include them in the commit, whereas Git is kind of the other way. Like you have to whitelist the changes you want. You can actually do some interesting things. Like you can go through and cherry pick specific changes and roll them up into a commit. You can save your entire repo to a file if you want to move it around.
I always remembered, like with Subversion, I don't know if Mercurial is this way or not, but you would have to create your repository on the server, then clone it down. But it seems like Git is kind of like you're saying backwards. Is like you would have to, I always had to create my Git repository local, then push it up, kind of force it in. But
yeah,
maybe I'm just not doing it the right way.
Well, technically you can do it either way. The idea is that everyone has a full copy of the repo, and then you're pushing changes back and forth. So I've done it where I've created on the server, pulled it down, made my commits, pushed it back up, and I've done it where I've worked locally and then just pushed everything to a blank repo.
I guess I'll mention it real quick. I didn't want to make this a talk about Git or anything, but I do use a tool. I'll share it out here. I use Git GUI. I think if you download Git from like the main Git website, you get Git GUI. So I can just go like open repository, browse, then go to one of my projects. Here's like my latest one, and I guess that's it right there. And open. A little bit slow. Yeah, so you get this interface. I don't know about, and then it'll show you which ones have changed. So this is a pretty nice tool if you don't want to use the command line. I mean, I guess the command line's faster, but you can just stage which ones. Usually just stage change, then write your commit message, then push. And then there's tools for your remote, so you can add a remote, and this is where you put the details about where on BitBucket or GitHub you want to push. So that's a nice little tool. But anyway, so I had a boatload of repositories, and Dylan, you were telling me that there was a tool in GitHub for importing a BitBucket repository. So it's just right here. I found it, and just import repository. Then you can just go to repositories, and like if I want to clone this one or pull this one over, I just copy the link and then paste it into here. Then I give it a new name on GitHub. Then I usually just mark it as private and make it public if you want to.
Yeah, and if your repo is private on BitBucket, you will have to log in. You will have to give GitHub your credentials to get that to work.
Yeah, they say they don't store that information, so I guess I believe them. But yeah, I did this like 130 times. It was ridiculous. But it got all my repositories except, or no, 130. So I have 113 repositories on GitHub now, which most are private. But it pulled all of my BitBucket projects over, except for one, the Expand Array, the little robot game that I made. The nice thing is that if you do it this way, it actually saves all your commit history, which is pretty cool. Like I can see like, all the changes that I made, for which I was able to do this on BitBucket, but it's just cool. This is a little bit better than just like downloading an extract on BitBucket or your latest release. This kind of keeps the history, just in case you want to go back for whatever reason and see. And the other cool thing is on BitBucket, you can go, if you go to your profile page, it always shows how many commits you make, which you can I don't know, hack is a bad word, but you can modify this. I mean, if you know what you're doing. But I can go back to like 2013. I can see the commits that I made from this repository that I pulled over from BitBucket. Or if I go to 2016, I can see all the commits that I made in 2016. So it actually pulls all that information over from BitBucket, which is pretty cool. Okay, I think that's all the news that I had. Mercurial. Oh, so on the Discord channel, I created a new Introduce Yourself channel. I think a lot of people have been posting their information. I did this because, like, when I was doing some of the write-ups and doing some of the posts, I'll see, like, Locksmith Army. I was like, who is Locksmith Army? And are they from Knoxville? I was like, oh, okay, this is James here. So I know some people had been like introducing themselves in the main channel or the general, but then I'd have to go back like a million posts and find out who these people are. So
yeah, that seems to be like a problem with Discords, is everything kind of gets dumped into the general channel at first.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way to search old posts, but this works out pretty good. So I'm doing this as we go. If I see a need for a channel, like Game Jam entries or show off, then I'll add it, but I'm not going to add a million channels just so we have a million channels. So.
Yeah, I think it's always a balance of like add channels when you need them, but don't like pre-populate like a bunch of different channels.
I've seen a lot of Discord servers with just millions of channels, and you don't know where to go to find the latest information. Okay, that's all the news. Now if I can find out where I was here. Okay, go back to Dylan. Dylan, did you want to start off showing off your Ludum Dare game?
Yeah. I wasn't expecting to be first.
Okay, I can show off some of the other games then first. Then I'll come back to you. So I think this was Locksmith Army. Locksmith Army. Let me share this out. Share.
There we go.
So this is, it looks like James worked with one other person. I don't know if this other person is from Knoxville or not, but we want to welcome James to our group, and yeah, he's a Knoxville resident, and he's a software engineer, and he's been working as a software engineer since 2013. And he worked at the programming department at Fountainhead College of Technology. And he hasn't done any major games, but he's working with Unity to get his skills up and everything. He's got his website, lsadevelopment.com, and he's Locksmith Army on Discord. So yeah, he made a game with someone else. Let me see if I can go back. It's called Raising Cerberus. And it was pretty cool. I played it, and it seems like it was a kind of a collection of mini games. So I'm assuming this, of course, was a quote-unquote jam game where they did it in 72 hours using pre-existing assets. This first game is kind of like a little fishing game. And then he has another game where you're kind of shooting, kind of like Defend the Planet or whatever, Space Invaders. Let's see if I can run this guy here. Can't remember where I put it. Maybe I just need to download, or is it web? I think I can.
I think it was web. That's the way I played it anyway.
There we go. So you can enter Hades, and you got. I think the objective of the so. Let me back up. So, Ludum Dare 46, the theme was keep it alive. So, you got Cerberus, the three-headed dogs, I guess, that guard Hades. You got to keep them alive by feeding them dog food. So, it looks like you get a little bit of food there to start out. But the thing that I really liked about this game is the world map. So, you can kind of pick where you want to go. So, you can go to, like, I guess this is the River Styx. And you got kind of like a fishing line, and you got to catch these little orbs right here, which is pretty cool. Now, the thing that I never really did figure out is how to convert what you catch into currency or whatever you need.
So I think the way it works is when you fish, you'll get these like items in your bag here. I don't remember what those were called. Mm-hmm. And you can do a couple of things with them. You can take them to Charon to sell them for food. Mm-hmm. And that's going to take essentially a day in game time.
Oh, okay.
You can also take them to Cerberus to like play with. Yeah. And that's going to increase your entertainment gauge. So you want to keep your food and entertainment gauge up. And then there's also another there's another mini game down here where you can pay gems to hire nymphs to guard the gate. If you don't, you can get gems from fishing occasionally. And then you can go to guard the gate, and like firing at the heroes, like killing heroes will give you occasionally give you gems that you can go back.
I didn't know I could get gems from shooting the heroes.
Yeah, I kind of felt like, and this is the way games like this go, like weekend game jam games go. Like, I feel like this should have been a whole other bar.
Yeah.
And maybe like some cleanup, but I really liked the fact that you were managing all these different types of resources, and the subsystems were kind of interconnected.
Yeah. See, that's the part that confused me, was like all the different resources. I was like, maybe just have gems, and so like converting it into dog food or whatever kind of confused me, or like the whole selling it. I mean, it's fine, but
it's not clear though.
Yeah, and this is a game jam game, so
I'm
not criticizing it or anything.
Yeah. No, I think once I got the hang of it, like if you were making this into a polished game, I can imagine like slowly introducing these things.
Exactly.
The thing that's tough is like both of the mini games require so much precision and kind of like planning your actions out, that like you have to lead when you fish, you have to lead when you shoot heroes, and it can be kind of tricky, but man, it's it's really neat the way everything interlocks together.
Yeah. I wonder if they did the art themselves. I didn't read the whole post or not, but really, it's kind of like the artwork that you do, Dylan, with the kind of like watercolor style and everything.
Yeah, I noticed. Like, I don't know how much of that is hand drawn, how much of that is
Like pre-existing.
or digital.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, that was one of the things that was really neat as well.
You got this little timer down here. I guess that's your 30 days that you have.
Yeah, I think every minute is equivalent to a day. So, if like a game of this will take 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
If you win.
I like the concept, and I really like the art.
Oh yeah, it's a really really interesting concept.
Cute puppies. Okay, so the next game on the list is Jacob's game, which, see if I can find it. I think I just have it on the main page here. Yes, I don't know if you pronounce this Machina or Machina.
I don't know.
I know in like Final Fantasy X that I think this is pronounced Machina, but yeah, Jacob, he made a game. Maybe he'll be here later. Maybe he'll be here in a future episode and tell us a little bit more about Machina. But his description is you play as a robot making its way through an impossible facility filled with mechanical ghosts. You must keep your batteries filled by standing under strange floating light sources and avoid the ghosts by not staying in their detection for too long. So I have this fired up. So obviously it's a game maker game, and I really like what he did in this one. So you can actually see the area. It's kind of like a little aggro area around the enemies. And if you get within that, then I think they get angry and start chasing you or shooting you. I can't remember. I think they just chase you.
Yeah, I never actually lost that way. I kind of assume that they sap your battery or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember if they actually. Yeah, I think you're right about that. But yeah, I think you get in within this little red area of the battery, then it'll fill your battery back up.
Yeah, there's like some hit detection there.
Yeah, it maxes out at 1506. I never figured out if you can walk on the black part or the.
No, I think you actually have to get fully in the tunnel, but one of the walls kind of is a lip up at the top of the tunnel, and so you have to make sure you're between that. Okay. Which, I mean, that can happen. He's not like he's kind of hand drawing these things and laying them out.
Yeah.
Instead of using like a tile grid, so that can happen. Like anytime I've done games like that.
Yeah, that's been a frequent, like you're saying, a frequent issue with games. Like if you got a corridor that's one tile wide and one tile high, and your character is also one tile, then sometimes you got to make your character make the hit detection box a little bit smaller than a tile, so you can get through. But yeah, he did a lot of work on laying out this level. I was impressed. I'll admit I didn't make it all the way through, but
I made it to something that I thought was the ending. Like it's a big crystal spike looking thing, and then I can keep walking. So I don't know if I actually finished it or not.
Yeah.
I really like I typically hate stealth games.
Yeah.
Just because they require so much precision. I think this is a really good example of a game that uses stealth mechanics, but is more forgiving. Like, you kind of have to, you kind of have the opportunity of working your way around if you get caught or if you get stuck. What I really like is like the level design is set up so that you kind of have to explore and make some choices, and that was really good.
Yeah, Jacob's done a really good job with his level layouts. I like. He had another entry, I guess a few Ludum Dares back. It's called Fire, where you're like at a campground, or I forget the actual name. It's something like Fire. And it's kind of like this, where you just go out and explore and try to get to the end, I guess.
Yeah, and this is one that I could see if you decided to make it into a full game and kind of polish it up, you could have the lights act as checkpoints, and that would make it really forgiving, and but still kind of capture that stealth aspect.
Because with this, if you get hit one time by an enemy, I think it sends you back to the beginning. But it seems like it's still kind of forgiving. I mean, if you do get in the hit detection area, which is pretty cool. I've never seen Jacob do this in one of his games. Like, if it detects you, then it gives you a little bit of I don't know the word I'm thinking of, but a little bit of leeway, I guess, and before it actually comes to attack you. And then when it notices you, then it kind of it comes at a straight line at you. So even if you are detected, you still kind of have a chance to get out of the way.
But if you leave its zone, it stops chasing you, so it's not like the game is over if you screw up.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's pretty cool. The thing that I was wondering, it looks like this robot has a meter on its chest, and I think it would be cool. I don't think it does this, but if you had that meter on its chest go down as the power goes down as well, that would be really difficult to do in Game Maker, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Just because you need a new sprite or have to figure out how to use a draw a line command to do that. But that's one of the things I noticed. I think that's a meter. It kind of looks like a little red needle on its chest there.
I didn't put that together, but yeah, I could see that. Yeah. That being a meter.
It's kind of hard to see. You got to get really close in there and see it. So, I'm not good at stealth games either. I never was a fan of Metal Gear. So I don't think I'll be able to complete this one. But I got pretty far. I mean, you get to the point where there's a lot of enemies around, and it looks like there's bugs or something over there.
Yeah, like actually you make your way around and then you come up through, like the crystal is all the way south of that.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, I wasn't sure if that was the end and he just didn't have an ending, or which, I mean, that's the way Game Jam games go.
Exactly, yeah.
Like it's really easy to leave off like a win condition.
Yeah, that's perfectly understandable. It kind of reminds me of that game Alan Wake, where you get to the... Like when Jacob put in his description where you got to get to the light, that's kind of like what it reminded me of. You get to the light. But I think in that game, it was like if you got to the light, then all the enemies in that area would disappear. But this is kind of like, run to the next battery charger. If Jacob was here, I would ask him if there was any significance to the, I think it's like 1506 power or maximum power.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like an odd number. I'm wondering if he just picked that or if it's like his favorite number. Or
yeah, I noticed the same thing. I just figured, it was kind of a random number.
Yeah. Oh, odd. Oh, well. So, yeah, check out Machina by Jacob. I think he has it on his Game Jolt page. So, Dylan, did you want to go next? I was going to save mine for last, since I'm going to talk a little bit about security and stuff, leaderboard security.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
All right, let me stop sharing.
Entire screen. All right. So mine was Potted Plant Simulator, and I actually, it's going to look a little different because I actually posted new version today.
Oh, okay.
So this is kind of, we actually talked about doing something like this when we did the theme kickoff of like a Tamagotchi for like house plants or something. And the idea is essentially it's procedurally generating this using different branches. To keep the plant growing, you have to give it plant food, and that will allow it to grow and sprout other branches. To keep the plant alive, you have to give it water. If you don't give it water, those branches will slowly start shriveling up, and those branches won't be able to spawn. Like right there, new plants.
I really like it how it just kind of withers away with all you got different frames of animation, so it just kind of looks like it gradually decays away.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Like the whole idea for this came to me when I was like, well, it seems like you could build a tree of branches, and then push data, like back and forth between them. And so what it does is, there's a certain pool of water and plant food that when you click the button, it applies to the plant itself. And then each branch in succession will pull water from it. If it can't pull water, it starts shriveling. It will also push plant food up, and if a branch can support new branches, then, or if a branch is growing, then it'll get a share of that plant food. And
so is it possible for the branches that are further out to wither away if you don't give it enough food and water, and for the main root branches to still stay alive?
Technically, the way I built it, it could. I think each branch pulls a certain amount of water, and if that branch, and then it consumes it. If that branch runs out of water, then it will shrivel up by itself.
Oh, okay.
But the way I've got the numbers set, it's not really going to do that unless you have the time scale really high, and you're not going to see those individual frames.
Oh, okay. I think it's really cool. It reminds me of something we have, like kudzu, something we have a lot, or ivy, something that definitely applies to East Tennessee. So after the branches have withered away and died, if you start watering and planting again, then the root will start to grow new branches again, but the ones that have previously shriveled up, they don't ever come back, right?
No, they actually do. I didn't do that much detail to it.
Okay.
And I'm not really sure why it's growing like this. I think that may just be the way I'm handling food and handling water, pushing down the tree. Mm-hmm. It's funny because I found some bugs in this. I started writing a blog post on how I constructed this, and I found just huge major bugs in how I was rendering things. So this is definitely one where I'm like, that's good enough. It works. I'm not going to get into details. But one of the tricky thing is if you give the plant too much food, you're going to get to a point where you can't keep it watered.
Oh, okay.
So there's kind of a balance. But
so I'm assuming for each branch, when you want to create a new branch, you take the current angle of the parent branch and then set a minimum and maximum angle from that one to do the next, because you don't want your child branch to point directly back toward the parent branch.
Right, and that was actually one of the bugs I found. The original way I tried to do it was each branch was a child of the last branch in the Unity hierarchy, and I ran into some weird scaling issues with that because that's how I make it look like it's growing as I apply scaling. So a branch can generate new branches at the end point or at a certain set of predefined joints along the branch, and it's just random how it decides to do it. So if it's at the end point, it's from negative 30 degrees to 30 degrees.
Oh, okay.
You've got kind of full range of motion out the top. If it's off the side, then it's something like 30 to 60 degrees. It'll either be way out or kind of in the same direction, like you're saying. Mm-hmm. So there's in fact, basically the way I set up the plant object was you can say, okay, give us scaling for branch length, give scaling for plant branch growth. Give a min-max angle at the endpoint, give a min-max angle at the joint, generate a certain number of leaves, generate a certain, allow a certain number of children, etc.
Oh, okay, that makes sense, because you don't want to have one branch with like 30 different child branches, so it's good to limit that. And so your water and plant, that just regenerates over time, right?
Yeah, and that was basically what I had to do to give it some sort of challenge, because otherwise you can just like keep clicking as much as you want.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a simulation, kind of like a Sim City or like the old Maxis games. There's really no end game to this. It's just to try to keep your plant alive.
Yeah, and like I said, eventually I think you'll end up with a plant. If you just keep dumping plant food and keeping it watered, you're gonna end up with a plant that's so big that you just can't you can't keep it alive, or can't keep the whole thing alive.
Now you can't overwater or overfeed it, right?
No, like I said, it's just when you click the button, it's just increasing the total count for the plant, and it's not. There's no logic that says if that pool's too high. Like I said, it's really simple, but by not defining it, I felt like I could make it feel more complex than it is.
Yeah, and if you make things too restrictive, because it seems like I played maybe one other game sort of like this, and it's like, oh, if you fed it too much, then it's going to die. And it's like, just let me feed my plant and let it grow.
Yeah. Like the idea at first was just to make this like an idle clicker game where you could run it in the background and just come back to it whenever.
I think it's very cool. Hey, it looks like Jacob joined us. Hey, Jacob, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Hey, we were playing your game a little bit earlier. Did you want to show it off this month?
I could show it off.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Open in a folder over here.
Now, is it called? Is it Machina? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, it's like Machina, like Deus Machina, I guess, or Machina, however you. I guess I just kind of named it that.
Yeah, because
so
I was wondering, like, this could be Machina, but I remember in Final Fantasy X they have Machina and it's spelled the same way. So I was like, I think that's the right way.
Yeah, so you play as this guy, this robot dude, and it's kind of like a stealth game in a sense, in which you have to like get past the ghost robots, as they're called. Like these guys right here, the trapezoids with the blue eyes and all the tendrils on the bottom. And the idea of this game is like you have to keep yourself alive by like getting down to the lamps down there and standing and like recharging your battery. So like you stand here and you recharge yourself, so then you can move on to the next zone or like next series of rooms, and you have to chain to get. You have to like get to the different safe spaces that have the lamps in them. I think there's one down here. So like with these robot guys, you get into the circle of them, and if you stand within this circle for too long, they run at you, and you have to try to get out of the way if that happens. Like, as you can see, they'll like run right at you, and you got to move out of the way, or they'll get you.
Yeah, it's like how you can see the hit or the aggro range or the detection area. Then it goes red when you're in its detection area.
Yeah, we were talking earlier. Like, I'm not a huge fan of stealth games because they tend to be pretty fiddly. But this was really, like, I really enjoyed this because it was so forgiving. You have a few seconds before the robot actually reacts to you.
Yeah.
Then if you get out of the way, then it's like they don't chase you anymore. And that's one thing that I hate about Metal Gear is like, oh, once I get caught, then I'm not caught forever unless I run for like 2 miles or something.
Yeah. This is just a simple like game because I'd never made like a stealth game before, so I just made one of these.
I think it's really good, especially for a Ludum Dare game jam.
Yeah. Originally, I wanted to have them like have a cone of vision instead of just a circle. But there was like a lot of weird visual bugs that kept happening that were messing with the actual vision cone. So I just simply like scrapped that and did circles because that was easier for it to work with. Sweet. And like your actual battery will like stop draining if you stand within the circle. That's not. Oh well. Like it'll just stop draining within the circle. I thought that could be like a cool like thing that like if you stand within like the middle, like the actual white circle, it just stops draining. Like it could be a like risk reward thing in a sort. If you're like low, then you need to like stop draining for a second so you could figure out what you need to do next.
So you're kind of like draining that energy from the enemy once you get
yeah.
close. That's cool. I didn't realize that when I played it.
Yeah, it's not really a big thing, and it's not very. You could do it, but it's not necessarily going to, be the best thing to do than just running past them. But yeah, it's just a very simple game. There's not really much to it.
So one thing I was asking Dylan earlier, it kind of looks like there's a meter on the front of the robot there. Is that what that is?
On what? The little like gauge on the front of him?
Yeah.
No, that was just a gauge, like a decorative thing, because these are robots, so it's like a robot thing.
Is there any significance to the 1506 for your maximum energy, or was that just a random number you picked?
That was just a random number I picked.
Oh, okay.
So then you had like a fairly decently sized like health pool, because that drains fairly quickly, so you don't have a lot of time to run between rooms.
Mm-hmm.
To get to these charging lamps. So as like we all know, the theme was the theme was like keep it alive. Mm-hmm. And I had a few ideas for that, like an exploration game or like you're in a factory, like a setting like this, where there was like different organs within the factory running different parts. And like the entire idea was to keep the factory alive by making all the robots inside happy, which in turn would make the organs healthy. But I couldn't, I tried to do that, but that didn't work out too well because it was getting, I didn't really know how I could do that within the scale I wanted, so I just had to go down to a simple stealth game where the entire idea of keep it alive is to keep yourself alive. So, I do wish I could probably use that idea sometime in the future at some point if I really wanted to, which I may, but at the time being, it's just this little game.
Yeah, I think we all started out with big ideas. I know I did that with my game too. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this and that, and I was like, oh, I just got to whittle it down, make it something simple.
Yeah, that seems to happen most times when we make when games are being made, is it's too big within the span we have, so we have to make it smaller so then we can actually make it.
But yeah, I think you did a great job for the level design, because this is a fairly complex level.
Yeah, it's just one big level, as you've seen. I kind of took, each different section kind of has a gimmick, or I tried to make it have one. This one doesn't really have one. It's just 3 big rooms. Effectively, just one room, you have a side room, and then you just have this one very big room up here that's just a bunch of enemies in it.
Now I saw a little island at the corner there with it looked like 2 little microchips or critters. Is that just for decoration there, or are they doing?
Yeah, there's just a few of these little floating islands that this one over here has a bunch of pipes on it. They're just going into that big hole. I do wish I kind of drew that a bit better, so then the holes don't just stop right at the hole.
Yeah,
pipes fine. It's fine. But the entire idea is, what are those pipes for? Why is there a bunch of pipes coming off of it, and where are they going? And why are they these big holes and with this weird red stuff in it? Like, it's
Yeah,
a
at first
mystery.
I was wondering if you could actually go down the holes, but
You can't. It's just like a stopper thing.
that makes
Like
sense.
like with this one, like they're supposed to like they're designed to like keep these areas more like enclosed, because that's like the gimmick of this of like that one area was like there's a bunch of smaller sections with holes like blocking them, and you have to figure your way out through them. Like this one, it's just a big circle that kind of shows you the robots. Like there's not a lot of them, and they just go around the biggest, like a fairly large circle. And that's kind of all they do. Like these robots, they just don't really, they don't have pathing or anything, or at least not really. They just like bounce off any surface they touch.
Oh, is there any randomization in them? Do they just go in a random direction until they bump into something?
Yeah. They just go in a random direction until they hit something, and then they go somewhere else. It's a fairly simple game, really. I do kind of like the robot guy, though, but I generally just think robots are cool, and factories and stuff.
Yeah, I was telling Dylan earlier, it kind of reminded me of a game called Alan Wake, where you got to get from like light pole to light pole, and this is kind of the same way, where you got to get to the next charging station.
I've heard of that game. I think that's the one where you play as the, like, you have to shoot the light at, like, you have your flashlight and you have to shine it at this shadow people.
Yeah,
and you can shoot them. Well, this is really it to my game. There's not much else to it. I mean, there is an ending part, but that really doesn't represent anything. Like I could probably just show that to you, since it would be fairly difficult. Well, probably not. But
Dylan said he got to what he thought was like a big crystal, which he thought was the ending.
Yeah, you go into like the teleporter crystal thing, and then you get taken to the room with the big machine with the heart in it and all the pipes.
Oh.
That was like from the original game. Like that was the starting area, and then you had to go off from that to get to the other places. But I didn't really know how to make that and how to make that actually work. So we just have this little game now.
I don't know. I thought, like, I ended up walking through the crystal, so I don't know what I did.
Oh, you walked through it?
Yeah.
That's weird. Maybe there's just some weird collision on that. Or maybe I didn't set that up right. But you're supposed to collide with it. Maybe it'll work here. And if it doesn't, I could probably just show you the room. But that's weird. I guess I'm sorry that didn't work.
It happens. It was kind of confusing to me because I was like, I don't know if I finished that. That's it.
Yeah, this thing?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there's a bunch of weird collision with that, I guess. I'm sorry that didn't work, but
That's fine.
It happens.
Yeah, I do stuff like that all the time.
I probably should have tested that bit more because I didn't test that very well.
Game Maker can be weird too.
Yeah.
Switch views. If I put it to here, can you see the Game Maker window?
Not yet.
Not yet, no.
Alright. I don't know how to swap it. I guess I go to share screen.
Yeah, I think you may just have to stop the Hangout and then restart it with the new application.
I think I swapped it. I can open it right about here. Can you see it? Like the Game Maker window?
Not yet.
No, it's still showing your icon.
Yeah,
All right.
Like Hangouts, you can like share a screen or share an app or.
Yeah, no, you can. That's what I was doing. Let's see if I can do it.
Yeah,
now.
if you limit it to an app, I think you actually do have to stop and restart your screen sharing.
All right.
Like go back to the video call, stop, and then go back up to the menu and do. You may have.
Yeah, I think you
may have refreshed. I didn't mean like stop the entire call.
Well, maybe that'll fix it. Hopefully. Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
All right, let's try this again. Share. Can you see it now?
Nope.
No. All right.
You may just want to do the entire screen.
All right. Stop screen share. Screen share. Your entire screen. Share.
Hey, there we go.
There you go.
Now can you see the Game Maker? All right. So this is like the place you were supposed to get to, and like I don't know where the robot went, but there's like a. It's like let's just spawn him back in, I guess. Like, so you kind of like were supposed to start here, and then you'd walk all the way up, and then you'd touch this, and the game would just restart. But it's like a very simple type of thing. Like, this was supposed to be the original beginning, and like you'd go up to this, and it was supposed to say something like ominous, and then you'd leave, and then you'd have to go to the different areas with similar machines, but with like different organs inside of it. Like maybe like a liver or like a brain or something, along with the heart, to like symbolize an entire factory or something like that. And then you'd have to like eventually come back.
Awesome job.
Yeah, I guess. I do wish I did kind of fix up the game a bit more, since I didn't... Oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. I do wish I worked on the game a bit more. I didn't really know what to do with it or what direction to take, so it just kind of ended up being a game, I guess. I just wish I worked on it a bit more and did more bug testing and checking with it.
Yeah,
Since to me it just kind of seems a bit broke.
there's only so much you can do in 48 hours or 72 hours.
Yeah.
I think my Hangouts froze up.
Yeah, mine did too.
Okay, I'm going to show off my game. And I got a little small mini talk, and it could probably be a talk for another time, but I want to go ahead and talk about it since on the Leaderboard Security, since it's fresh on my mind. So yeah, this is a simple game. You click on the chicken, or no, you don't click on the chickens. The chickens run back and forth. So my original thought for this game... Oh, I need to share.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. Share. So my original idea for this game was I was going to do like the Tamagotchi thing where you have an egg and you click on the egg and then you have the chicken grow up and you got to keep your chicken alive. I'm going to have to mute this. There we go. But then I thought, I was like, okay, I don't have time to do all that. So I'm just going to have a chicken running back and forth, and I'm going to have these apples fall, and you just try to click the apples to keep the apples from falling on the chicken's head. Then if you knock out the chicken, then it's game over. Once you click on so many apples, you get additional chickens, which I know you can get 2. I don't know if it's possible to get 3 yet. I didn't do a lot of play testing on this. But for this one, I did... use the thing in the rule book about using previous code. So I used my leaderboard example. So this is my first Ludum Dare to actually try to incorporate a leaderboard into the game. So it's pretty simple. I think I just spent like 6 or 7 hours on this one. I didn't put too much work into it. But let me show off the game. So there's the title screen. You got the chicken. I did this in Blender and did the music in GarageBand. And, of course, Unity. So you just start out, and the apples fall pretty slowly. I think I saw a couple of comments. I was reading Recursor's comment, and he said that sometimes the apples were kind of hard to click. So after you click so many, you're going to have 2 chickens. And the chickens move like at a random... They just move left and right, but they move for a random amount of time, and then they stop for a random period. So you never know exactly how long they're going to stop and how long they're going to move. So I'll just
that actually did kind of feel realistic for birds. If you've watched birds move around.
Yeah. So I got 32 seconds. I'll submit that. So it's going to submit and hopefully come back. So yeah, Dylan, you did really good on this one. You got 36 seconds.
I don't know how I managed that. Like, I played it a couple of times. One of the things I found interesting was, so it eventually occurred to me that you don't have to click on every apple. You just have to click on the ones that are going to hit your chicken.
Yeah, so you got to kind of anticipate where the chicken's going to stop. Or where it's going to be when the apple. So it's completely random. I mean...
Well, it was kind of interesting because there's almost a trade-off there where... If you don't click on apples, you don't get the extra chickens. For a second, I wondered, like, well, if I don't click on a lot of apples, will that keep the apples from speeding up? And, you know, it almost seems like if you wanted to polish up the game, you could make different game modes where, you know, if if you didn't want chickens to get hit, then it might be advantageous not to get a whole lot of chickens, because that makes it more likely that they get hit, or not to click on a lot of the apples because it speeds it up.
Yeah. Yeah, so the way I have it is like different waves. So every time you see apples spawn, that's like one wave, and then there's like 3 waves in every level. So yeah, it's going to automatically. So after 3 waves, it's going to increase either the gravity or the number of apples that are spawned each time.
Yeah.
So like down here it says level 5. And I just kind of had this as debug just so people know what's going on down here. So it could be the case that after 3 waves you get a whole lot more apples, or you get a lot more gravity.
Yeah, I remember it ramped up pretty harshly. Like one time when I played, like I got that for a while, and then about the end it just rained down apples.
I think at around that 36-second point, around 40 seconds, I think it almost becomes important. Like this guy got 49 seconds, but it seems like 35, 30 seconds, 6 seconds, it kind of levels off.
Yeah. Like he found a way to make it through one more wave or something.
The one thing I did do is I cached the username. I probably should display it again at the end. But so the first time you play it, you'll enter the name for the leaderboard. But then the subsequent times after that, it just stores that and submits the same name, which I've done for some other games before. But yeah, what I was going to talk about, so that's the game. I'll probably do a time lapse a little bit later. I have the video. Now, I didn't get the time lapse video for the GarageBand stuff, because I think on Mac OS there's like this new permission you got to give OBS, and I didn't do that. So that won't be in the time lapse. But what I was going to talk about, and I actually did slides for it, is Leaderboard Security. So I actually wrote this code, or actually I started with someone else's code who developed a MySQL, PHP, and Unity solution for doing leaderboards, and it is on my GitHub as well. It's linked off the project page right in my previous code right here. So what this allows you to do is it sets up a little database and PHP. So what I did with this code, I mean, it didn't work with Unity 5, so I updated it so it works with Unity 5 and later versions. And also I cleaned up the SQL database and added some new features, such as different data types that it can store, such as time and score. Because I think this originally was just, it takes an integer and that's all you can do. But yeah, you can get that code up here. So with the security, and I'll talk about it here in a little bit, what happened was somebody, what I think is funny about this is I think some people had more fun hacking the leaderboard than playing the game. But yeah, I looked into that. Someone generated a score, and it was like 16 minutes. I was like, okay, nobody played this for 16 minutes and stayed alive for 16 minutes. I'm going to say this really wasn't malicious. Because all they did was submit one bogus score. If somebody really wanted to be a pain, they could just like try to fill up the database or something like that. So they didn't do that. So I was kind of happy that somebody did expose the vulnerability in this leaderboard system, just so I know what was going on, things to look out for if I ever wanted to take this further. And I think it makes it a more secure or more mature software product. And that's one benefit to open source is like if I put the code out there, then somebody can like look at it and find out what are the security vulnerabilities in it. I've never personally really had an interest in hacking, but I need to be aware of it, that people can do it, and how it can be used to exploit games. And it reminded me of, Dylan, what you told me one time. Is like when I was searching for Kitty's Adventure, like on DuckDuckGo or wherever, it would come up and say Kitty's Adventure hacks or cheats or something. And I was like, well, don't take that personally. It just means people are actually trying to figure out. People are playing your game, so don't take it the wrong way. So yeah, so it's pretty obvious. Here's the hacked value. They put in 16 minutes, and they put LD hacker, so I was like, okay, yeah, this really wasn't malicious or anything. But what I found out when I started looking at the code, they submitted a value of 100,000. So the way the leaderboard stores the value for time, it stores it in hundredths of a second. So if you look at it, 100,000 equals 16 times 60,000, which is the number of minutes. 40 times 100, which is 4,000, and 0 times 1, which is the hundredths of a second. So you add 96,000, 4,000 together, and that'll give you the 16 minutes and 40 seconds. So first thing I did is I went into the database, my SQL database, and looked at it, and I can see here's the columns that are defined for the scores. So originally I didn't have this ID, but I went ahead and generated a unique identifier in later versions of this leaderboard code, just so if I wanted to delete a value or things like that, I could just delete it by ID and not have to actually say delete the name, where name equals this and value equals that. You just say delete ID this. It makes things a lot simpler. So I didn't delete this value. I just kind of set them back down to 1. Just to take them down off the top of the leaderboard. But you can see some things. It's like, okay, this score was submitted kind of around the same time as this guy. So whoever did this one probably also did this one as well. And so the next thing I did was I looked at the web logs. So the way this leaderboard works, it just makes like, I don't know if it's REST, but it's just like regular HTTP calls that gives you a 200 code back. So what it does is you call add score, scores add score, and you pass it the game ID, which is unique for all my games. In this case, is 6,651. The name, the score you want to submit, and a hash value. So what the hash value does is that it ensures that it's a legitimate score as best as it can. So what it does is it takes the game ID, the name, the score, and a secret key, quote-unquote secret key, hashes those together and generates a unique value, and you pass that as a parameter. So then when the web server gets it, when the PHP code gets it, it takes those same values that you pass as web URL parameters, the game, name, and score. Then it also has that quote-unquote secret key on the server side. So when it gets it and it hashes those same values, it compares that hash value with the one that was submitted by the game. And if those two are equal, then you know you got a legitimate score. Otherwise, if you just submit like a hash with the game, name, and score without that secret key in the hash, then it's going to generate a different hash value that's not going to equal the one that's on the server. So when I did, I guess I'll maximize this a little bit more. So when I looked at this, the one thing I did realize, this wasn't a brute force hack. It wasn't somebody just trying to continually pound the web server with different hash values. So the question is how did they calculate the correct hash to insert this value? Another thing is like I was kind of relieved to actually see they did, I guess you call this kind of like an endpoint, a web endpoint or something, that they actually did use that interface for submitting the score. Now, if I saw that score pop up on the leaderboard, and if there wasn't an entry in the web log, then I'd be thinking, oh, somebody actually hacked into the server, or they hacked in directly to the database, and they got direct access to the database. So I was kind of relieved to actually see this in the web logs. So one thing that's kind of neat is, in the web logs, you can actually get their IP. If you really want to try to track somebody down, you can get their IP right here and run it through an IP trace. And you can actually just do a trace route and find out where this person is. So I could actually trace it back to San Mateo here. Now, if they're running through a VPN, then this data probably isn't accurate. It wouldn't be accurate. But since it resolves to a Comcast.net destination, then I think that's probably legitimate. There's also a good site called whatsmyip.org. You can do the same thing with this, submitting IPs and finding locations. Plus, there's a lot of other good tools on that site, so I wanted to mention it. So I talked about this a little bit earlier. What I'm using is I'm using the MD5 hashing algorithm, which if you ask any security expert, they're going to tell you that's unsecure. You need to be using like SHA or I forget the other, not RSA, but there's a couple of AES. They say you should use it like AES 256 or something like that. But I think for just a leaderboard, I think MD5 is okay. I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end, but I don't think the hashing method was actually the vulnerability in this case. So I talked about this a little bit earlier in the C code. I just do an MD5 sum of the name, score, the game ID, and the secret key, and then submit that using a www. I think I don't have it in the screenshot right here, but it's like a www request object. You just send that off to the web server. One thing that I realized is if you're running your game on the same web server as the database or the endpoint that you're submitting to, then you won't have any problems with a WebGL game. But if your WebGL game is running on a different server, such as itch.io, and you're trying to submit the score to levidsmith.com, then that won't work. I've tried that before. It won't work. So the one question I have is like, well, since we're doing Ludum Dare here, you're supposed to submit your source code, which means it's open source. So is open source more secure than closed source? Well, with closed source code, you do have security through obscurity. So if this was a closed source game, then nobody would really know what string I'm submitting here, which gives you a little bit of security, but it's not ever truly secure.
Yeah, the fact that it's a web URL, and the fact that it's a Unity game, there are ways you could do that are pretty simple.
Yeah,
to get that information.
I'll talk about that here in a little. So I actually went on a quest to try to hack my own game. The one other thing that you can do is we'll give you a little, not true security, but instead of submitting these like as URL parameters, like get parameters, you can submit them as post parameters. But if you know what you're doing, you can still see those post parameters. You just won't see them in your browser URL. So with open source code, it could be more vulnerable, but you have more people looking at it. That's always been the whole mantra type thing with open source. It's like, well, since it's open source, you got more eyeballs on it. So if there are vulnerabilities, hopefully somebody's going to see it and find a solution for it. So I already talked about that, generating the hash. So here's the server-side code right here. So I get the name as a get parameter, score, game, and then the hash value that's submitted. And I do some sanitizing of the string in case they submit bad things. Here's the secret key that I blurred out right here. I'm going to have to rekey all my games anyway. One thing that I should do that I don't currently have is I should have the secret key in the database and probably have a secret key for each game. That way, if the key is compromised, I'm not having to go through and rekey all of my games, which is probably going to take quite a bit of time. But yeah, that's how I do the MD5 hash right there. I can't remember if it's a PHP like module or if you just call MD5. So if the expected hash equals the hash that's generated on the server side, then we're going to insert it into the database. Otherwise, we're going to say invalid hash. So here's a way to generate an MD5 sum, which I can bring up. I usually use my, not Sigwin, the other one, which MinGW. Yeah, MinGW. You can do like an echo-n and say I want to do an MD5 hash on Levi. That can do echo-n Levi to MD5 sum. I think MD5 is pretty standard. If it's not, you can include it, and that'll give you the MD5 hashes. It's this long string of characters right here. One important thing is to put the -n after your echo, because if you just echo Levi MD5 sum, then I think it's going to put a new line after Levi right there. Then you're going to get a completely incorrect hash for that string. It's going to include that new line right there. So I did like a simple test right here. Did an echo-n Knox Game Design. I'm going to submit a value of 42 to game 6651. I'm going to use the secret key hello. Then I got this hash. And then when I try to submit that, it gives me an invalid hash value because hello does not match the secret key that's on the server. Okay. So one other cool thing you can do, and I can do this real quick right here. If you got the game running, you can go to web develop. If you're using Firefox, you can go to web developer and then network and bring it. If it's not selected, just press this network tab. So I'm going to click restart on the game. Oh no, there it goes. So I'm just going to let the chicken die here. Okay, come on, chicken. Come on, chicken. Go ahead and die. I guess I should click apples. It may speed it up. Maybe that's the key to the... Okay, there it goes. So you can see there, right as the game ended, it's going to submit these values, and it's going to keep that cached LDS name and submit a new hash right there.
And for what it's worth, even if this was running under, like this was a Windows game, there's a program called Fiddler. I think it used to be a Microsoft product. It's for essentially debugging web applications.
Oh, okay.
Like if I'm developing a web application and I want to see what calls made to the browser, the browser made to the server, and what it got back, I can run that and it will look through all the traffic that's coming through my computer.
Oh, okay.
And it was kind of like what existed before the web developer toolbar was a thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know about this until like a couple of weeks ago, and somebody that I know is like, oh, you can just get all the web traffic through Netscape, or not Netscape. Wow, I'm going really way back there. Firefox.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool tool. So I'm going to have to look into Fiddler. I was trying to debug a printer problem. I got like a little kind of network printer here, and I downloaded Wireshark, which I know is kind of like a hacker type tool, but I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, Fiddler, and the reason I say Fiddler, I'm not really sure about like Wireshark and how all that stuff works. Fiddler is really, really like, it's like at the HTTP level instead of actual like checking your network packets or something like that. It's not really a hacker application. It really is for just doing web development.
Yeah, I've never taken a network. That's one of my regrets, is I never took a networking class. So everything I've learned is just kind of like, I really never had like an interest in networking. I was more like, hey, I like developing apps. I'm not.
Oh yeah, the same. Like what I know for networking is just kind of a means to an end.
Exactly. It's like, oh, let me know what I need to do to get this problem fixed. But in the game right here, you can notice is like it'll do a add score once it's over with. Then it will pull down the top scores. I think I added a little bit of delay. And then I do like and all the code's online if anybody wants to look at it. I think there's like a yield command. So you kind of like kick off a coroutine and then you yield until you get like a response. I'm not sure if you get a response back or not, but I think it's supposed to yield until that score has been submitted. But you may still need like a little bit of delay in there, because sometimes I'd notice it would display the scores before the score is added. So if you had a top score, you wouldn't see it until the next time you played the game. But in every case, it's supposed to do an add score, then get the top scores. And go back here. Oh, and the one cool thing about the, I keep wanting to say Netscape, Firefox is you can edit this URL, then resend it. So if you do want to try to hack it, then you can like change a value here or change the hash, then resubmit that. So there's a cool tool out there. There's a few of these online, but the one that I found is MD5 Reverser. I won't go to it, but I'll just show what it does. So you can pass in a MD5 hash, and it has like this huge database of all these common words and common strings. And if you give it an MD5 hash, because with an MD5, there's no key or anything like that, so every word will always hash to the same value. So it has this huge database, and if you submit a string, then it's going to check its database or its dictionary, then return if it has a valid MD5 hash for that value, what that value is. So you can see, like with this one, I submitted this MD5 hash for Newton, and it found Newton. But when I hashed Newton plus the game ID plus the score plus the secret key, which I have blocked out here, I generated a hash for that. Then I tried to look that up, and it didn't come back with value. So that's telling me that it is a secure hash, or it is a secure string right there. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to figure out how these guys, how they did this. And I found, just doing some searching, I found a few different tools: ILSpy, DevX Unity, UTinyRipper, and .peek. Like I said, I'm not a hacker. I just want to know how they did this. The first one I tried was ILSpy, which can be used to decompile Unity code. It seems like it was better decompiling the C#, the core files. I could never get a handle on my actual code. So that one really didn't. I tried opening the WebGL WASM code Unity web file, which I think is where all of the values for my game are defined.
Yeah, so ILSpy is it's specifically for .NET or Mono, and so that's why it.
So I was trying to feed a WebGL into something that's expecting a DLL.
Yeah.
I found that with a couple of these. There's probably a tool specifically for hacking the Unity web, the WebGL files. The next one that I tried was this DevX Unity. Seems like they had a free version, then a paid version or something. So with this one, I was actually able to go in and decompile. So with this, I did use the Windows version, because I posted both Windows, Mac, and the web version. So I'm just going to say, okay, I'm just going to try to hack the Windows version, because that seems like that's just the simplest way to get at that key. So I was able to go in and find the assembly-c#.dll in the generated build, and ran through this decompilation option. And this thing has a ton of options, so I really didn't know what I was looking at here. If you really know what you're doing, then you probably know which values. You can select the decompiler type, dnspy, things like that. So I just tried to feed it the different values, and I was able to generate get a look at all the C# files in my program. But when I clicked on one of them, it would display the constants value that I had defined, but it wouldn't actually display the value. It showed the name of the variable or the constant, but it wouldn't show the actual value. So I was like, okay, that one didn't work. Another one that I read about was UTinyRipper, and I can't remember if I passed this. This one actually took the Unity web data file. So with this, and the one interesting thing about this, if you have a WebGL game that you post out on the web, you can use this tool. I wouldn't recommend doing it, especially for a commercial game or anything. But you can actually point it at your Unity web file and extract all of the image files, all your sprites, all your PNGs, JPEGs, all your music files, and things like that. It actually preserves the names as well. So your textures and music files are not secure. Your font files are not secure in one of these Unity web packages. So this is the one that worked for me. And it's actually it's called .peek, and it's made by JetBrains, which is actually, I've used some of their products like IntelliJ. They seem to have good stuff. But the interesting thing about this, let me see if I can try to run it right here. .peek. Yeah, JetBrains.peek.
Yeah, I think this is another .NET decompiler, which again, that's a debugging tool. If I'm using a library in .NET and I want to see what it's doing, so I can see why it's failing, or I can do something like it. That's what I use. It's a legitimate thing.
Yeah, exactly. So just for debugging, this is good to know for debugging. But I guess the one thing that I took away from this is if you do have a Unity game, let's see if I can click on chicken here. You can view all of the methods. I think you can actually double click on one of these. So it'll try to decompile it. And it looks pretty close to source code right here. I mean, I don't put my open braces on new lines or anything, but it's if you got a Unity build, you can run it through .peek and you can get pretty much all the source code. So I do have this constants right here. I'm not going to click on this one because I don't want to rekey my game right now. But yeah, you can get those values for the leaderboard key. So once you get this leaderboard key, then all you have to do is run your own MD5 hash on those values. Since it's open source, you know the format that the server is expecting, and then submit your values like that. Like you were saying, Dylan, I couldn't get .peak to work for WebGL. So there may be a similar program to .peak for WebGL. I don't know.
I mean, I would pretty much expect that because if you're sending something down to the client, it's at the client, you can, there's probably some way to read it.
Yeah. And if anything else, if you're good enough, you can take a hex editor and go, if you know where that value is in memory, you can just open up a hex editor and start reading those bytes off and get it that way. Okay, so here's another thing. This is one of my first things that I thought could have been the problem. So I was foolishly, I was live streaming me working on the leaderboard code. And of course, I displayed the secret key on screen. So if somebody was watching at that exact moment, they could have seen the key right there. I did set it to private after. It's only viewed 4 times, but that's something to definitely keep in mind if you're live streaming. Don't expose your keys on a live stream. Also, if you're submitting your code to a source code repository such as GitHub or BitBucket, make sure you take out your secret keys, your private keys, out of your source code. Or better yet, what I did is I just put those keys in a separate file, then put that in my get.getIgnore file, so I'm not checking in the key into the source code repository. As we were talking about a little bit earlier, one other thing that could be possible is like if you are good enough and you can hack the memory, then you could actually hack the game memory and have it submitted that way. It's probably a little bit more difficult to do that. So the one thing that I noticed looking at the web logs, I probably mentioned this a little bit earlier, but in the game, ad score is called right before display scores, or ad scores is called right before top scores, which are return scores. So if you see an ad score followed by display scores.html, which is the web page where I display the score or display the scores online, that means somebody's probably trying to hack it, because display scores is leaderboards right here. This is display scores. So that means somebody submitted a score and then they didn't go through the game. They just tried to load this web page. So that's kind of a key to show that it's an illegitimate score. Another thing is like, well, maybe somebody actually found a glitch in the game and was able to get it to run for 16 seconds. Maybe they found a way to get the chicken to run outside the fence or something like that. Or like an automated clicker or something like that. That's a possibility. Another thing that I thought could have been an issue was when I was looking through my web logs, I saw a lot of calls to MediaWiki. Now, that could have been just a bot, but it seems like some of them were pretty close to around the same time as these ad score requests. So I looked at my MediaWiki, which I just had for like doing documentation and things like that. Last time I updated that was November 2017, so I think there was some possible exploits in that. My one complaint about MediaWiki, which is the same thing Wikipedia runs off of, it's not an easy patch. You actually have to download a tar.gz, extract it, and change some config settings, move your images directory over. I wish there was like a one-press button in MediaWiki like there is for WordPress that just updates it for you and keeps it up to date. So maybe I'll have to write some scripts to do that or something. And another thing you got to watch out for is like, some people do put out hacker bounties to say, hey, if you can like submit a score to this leaderboard, we'll give you $200 or something. So there is that type of stuff that goes around. But this whole thing, I was thinking about better options for like encrypting that key, which is never going to be like completely secure. Because I was kind of thinking like the old Game Maniac match in here. You got to put the key somewhere. Whether you probably don't want to put the key in under the welcome mat in front of your door, but you got to put it somewhere. Even if you hash it 1,000,000 times, a person can do that as well. The only secure way is like doing like a public key encryption, where the client has a private key and a public key, and the server has a private key and a public key, and then it would encrypt the score with its private key and the server's public key, and then the server would decrypt it with its private key and the client's public key. So that's a way to do secure transmission of those values, but it still isn't securing the key within your game. There are some tools out there called obfuscators, so that's another option. So like instead of having it as a variable called leaderboard key, then it would call it foo245 or something like that. So just make it harder for somebody to get at that key. Another thing, as we mentioned earlier, just don't make it open source. That'd make it a lot harder to hack. One other thing that you could do, and I've seen some systems online do this, is like a ticketing system. So you could like make a request to the server saying, hey, I want to submit a score to the leaderboard. Then the server would come back and give you a ticket and then say, okay, you can submit a score. Here's a ticket to do that. Submit your score within the next 60 seconds or so. Then it would verify that ticket on the server once you submit it. Now, a person could always like emulate that, but it just makes it harder for them to submit an illegitimate score. And you could also like have the person provide their IP to get a ticket back and hash that maybe, and just give you a little bit more, really not security, but make it a little bit more difficult for somebody to submit an illegitimate score. And so I noticed somebody else submitted I Love Chickens with a time of like 69 or 6 million or something like that. I'm not sure if this was the same person that hacked it before, because once that person knows the key, he can submit as many scores as he wants to. But yeah, obviously he didn't go through the game interface because he went directly to add scores to display scores. He didn't get top scores. But what's weird is at the exact same time to the second. So it's almost like done in one request, which is kind of weird. So I noticed a little bit further down, I was looking through all the add score calls, and there was a add score, and he submitted a score and a hash, and it didn't end up in the database. So that was a failed attempt at adding a score to the database. But yeah, here's some. I'll put these slides up on the website about the MD5 reverser, and a really good article about how to like protect Unity games from hacking. But I don't think there's any like surefire way to completely protect that. I mean, if there's a way to hack it, then somebody probably will.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only real surefire way is a platform like, how Steam does achievements and things like that, is you have to log in, or Google Play or something like that.
Yeah, and you get into the whole two-factor authentication where it's like, and that's the thing about this leaderboard, why it's insecure, is that I don't require somebody to log in. So once you require somebody to log in, then that's something that they always talk about two-factor authentications, like it's something you know and something you have. So if you had like a token or something that changed values, or if it's a value in your head, then you can add what's in your head to that hash value. But since I just kind of leave it open for people to submit whatever scores they want to, then that leaves it to open.
Yeah, I don't know that there's, like you said, I don't know that there's a solution to it other than putting more layers in between, the key and where it's used in code.
Yeah, I guess all there is to make people jump through more hoops. But yeah, I don't know. It was kind of fun. I thought it was kind of fun figuring out how they hacked the leaderboard there, which, look into it some more. Oh, one other thing I wanted to share. Oh, I guess I'll go around. Hey, Jacob, was there anything else you wanted to talk about or share this month?
I don't really have anything to talk about or share too much.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for showing up and showing off your game.
You're welcome. I've been working on some game experiments, but not really anything major.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, if you have anything to show next time, just let us know. Okay. Dylan, was there anything else you wanted to show or talk about?
Nah, I don't have anything else.
Oh, okay. I was going to show off one thing. I was putting up a lot of all my old stuff, and my grandfather, believe me, this does in a way correlate to game development. But he did like whittling. He did like a lot of wood carving work, and he made these wooden chains, which I have a few of these. But he made like these wooden pliers and things like that. So after all the years, the local newspaper called the Oak Ridger, they came by and they did an interview with him. And the one thing I liked about this article right here is called Whittler. It's just something you have the urge to do. And I kind of feel like this is the same thing with game development. It's like game development is just something you have the urge to do. If you don't want to make games, then it's probably not for you. So I think that kind of applies in many different facets. It's like whatever your thing is, you just got to have the urge to do it. I guess with any hobby. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up. Stop. Yeah, you go to www.knoxgamedesign.org to go to the website. You can find all our past episodes. And our podcast is on iTunes if you want the audio version, or you can go to the website and get all the video as well, which I definitely recommend. A lot of good stuff out there. Plan is next month is I'm going to talk a little bit about Pygame, the game that I've been developing in Pygame, and then probably the following month will be maybe Monogame, if I get around to that. If anybody else out there has anything they want to do a topic on or whatever, just let me know. We can present whenever. So anyway, thanks everyone out there for listening and watching.